Amid the backdrop of a declining national violent crime rate, but a concerning increase in Charlotte's youth-related crime, CMPD Chief Johnny Jennings was in Washington, D.C. today to talk with President Biden about fighting crime and making our community safer. Chief Jennings is joining us now. Thanks so much for being here with us, Chief.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We want to dive right in with some of the data that you've presented to us recently. So last year, we're seeing from your department some numbers showing officers made more than 3,000 arrests of juveniles, and that's up about a third from 2022. What is driving this trend?
Yeah, I think the only answer that a lot of us have across the country with different chiefs is we started seeing this occurring after COVID. And I think schools were out during COVID, and a lot of kids didn't really have a whole lot to do. And ever since then, this crime trend with juveniles just seems to keep getting worse and worse. And I think we have to really find a spot at this point to reverse the trend, because we're talking about our future here. We're talking about young men and women within the next few years are going to be adults, and we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make them productive citizens in the future.
Now, you included some of the data we just mentioned in a piece in The Observer last week, alongside other numbers, and you also mentioned how your officers cannot keep playing what you call catch and release, and that Charlotte's wave of juvenile crime is fueled in part by that. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's so frustrating. We have a lot of great men and women out there doing a lot of investigative work and solving crimes and trying to bring closure to victims regularly. And when you have that, and the only results that they see coming out of it is to release that young man or that young woman back into that same environment, simply so they could go back and reoffend. And you're constantly arresting the same people over and over again and simply just releasing them back to the parents or the guardians. And that is what when I talk about the frustration with law enforcement, is that our officers cannot continue to play that catch and release and simply deal with the same issues over and over again.
Now, you mentioned the catch and release kind of in the context of the raise the age legislation that had passed here in North Carolina right before the pandemic. And you had made a point to say you're not necessarily wanting to overturn that, but there are some changes that you think need to happen in order to sustain the type of, I guess, outcomes that this legislation has.
Certainly. And, first and foremost, I feel like we need to have a juvenile detention center in Mecklenburg County. We're the largest county in the state. We deal with more juvenile arrests than probably anyone else in the state. And to have to take those juveniles to a neighboring county for detention just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So when we talk about raise the age, and again, I've never been one to criticize raise the age, but you can't do that without providing the resources necessary to handle the influx of young men and women that you're going to start seeing coming through the system. And it's a trifecta for us, because not only with the raise the age, we started seeing more and more juveniles committing crimes. Even without raise the age, we were seeing an influx in juvenile crime. And then on top of that as well, is you're having these kids getting younger and younger, committing more and more violent crime. And that's a scary thought when you start looking at someone who's 12 and 13-year-old that's carrying guns and using those guns in the commission of crimes.
Yeah, a scary thought. Also just sad to think about young people doing this. Of course, you alluded to the juvenile detention facility. Is there anything else that lawmakers or policymakers could give you and other departments as far as, trying to tackle, give you support? Is mental health, something that needs to be addressed as far as providing services for that in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And mental health is a big topic, and we've had that discussion as well with other chiefs across the country, that a lot of these young people that we're seeing, they are struggling from mental health issues. And I've always said that we have to be able to identify programs that we can get young people, identify those that are at risk, and get them the programs that they need to be able to deal with everyday life situations. And a lot of times this often falls way too much on police to be able to, to deal with the young people. We're on the front lines of this, and we're seeing them when they commit the commission of a crime. But by the time they come into our hands, I feel like it's almost too late. We have a great diversion program within CMPD, but I think it needs a whole lot more than what we're doing within law enforcement to try and keep these kids out of the system.
How do we have those discussions? I guess, how do you try to find the solution to such a multifaceted problem? Because I guess, I'm thinking, of course, what do the children need? Maybe what do their caretakers or parents need to be able to properly support their kids in being on the right path? I mean, there's just so many different avenues that you kind of have to tackle when you tackle this one problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. But what is good is we're getting the story out, and people are paying attention right now. So there are people that are a lot smarter than I am that would be able to come and say, these are some solutions that we have, and this is how we can help. I don't think it should fall on the police, but I do think we have a role and some responsibility to make sure that we're keeping our kids in the right path and right direction. So I'm hoping that as we continue to talk about this, that it doesn't just stop with talk, but it results in actions, whether that's through state legislation, whether that's through funding, the allocation of resources. All of that has to come into play when we start talking about investing in our young people so that they can have better futures than the past that we see in some of them go on right now.
You mentioned in that piece that we talked about that was in the Observer that there are some success stories out there, and there are measures that the department is taking. Can you speak specifically to some of the programs that you feel seem to be working? What sort of activities do those programs entail?
Yeah, so we've had great programs within our diversion program, and that's one of the programs that we have that is designed specifically to keep young people out of the system completely. And so if we find that someone and arrest them for a misdemeanor, low-level misdemeanor offense, we can put them through the diversion program without actually processing them through the juvenile system. I don't have the exact number right now, but we were up as high as 97% of the juveniles that went through the entire program did not recidivate. And that is a huge success when we are looking at what we're trying to turn the lives around of these young people. So we have excellent programs within CMPD, but there's also a lot of excellent grassroots organizations out there that are doing great things with our young people, but it's still not enough. It's not just about the programs we have for young people, but also having the right young people in those programs. So I'm encouraged by what we do within our department. We have great staff that does great things with, whether it's simply classes with young people and getting them to choose career paths, and basically connecting them with employment, all of that to ensure that they're going to have long-term success in life.
It's promising to hear that there have been some success stories to share. Finally here, of course, we mentioned your visit to the White House, speaking with the Biden administration about managing juvenile crime. Anything that stuck out to you that came out of that discussion that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so my conversation with the president was very positive. I think he, and as well as with the other chiefs, that we really feel like he has a genuine interest in what we need to be successful. There was some indication he may want to have us back up, and he said that we talked about some of the assistance that we've been getting from the federal government by way of grants and funding, and he also mentioned that there's more to come. So that was encouraging for a lot of us. But the fact of being able just to simply sit down and have that conversation meant a whole lot to the chiefs that were in the room with me, because we were able to voice our concerns, talk about what's working, and where do we need to go from here. And I think he was very receptive to that. He actually stayed longer than he was supposed to because they were trying to get him to another meeting, but he had such an interest in what we were talking about that he stuck around and listened to what we had to say.
I'm glad you felt like your voice was heard there. And of course, a conversation to be continued as the whole community works towards a solution for this problem. We thank you so much, Chief, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.